Teachers Ben Jennings here. We're in session 11 in our second half of the study of Genesis. And today's lesson covers Genesis 41, verses 14 through 21, and then 33 to 37. If you were going to put a time frame that's a pretty pivotal time in somebody's life, and you think about pivotal moments in the life of the stories of people in the Bible, this probably ranks up there as a pretty pivotal moment in the life of one of the Bible historical figures. This is the life of Joseph that we're studying. The last time we studied the last lesson, he was put into prison by Potiphar. He found favor in the eyes of the prison warden because God was with him, and he's there, and he's put in charge. Like everywhere else, he gets put in charge of where he's at. He blooms where he's planted because God is with him, and because he's just believes that because God's with him, he makes these really, really good choices. That's what we see happening with Joseph. Um, in between last week's lesson when he was thrown into prison and what we're going to see this week, he has an encounter with two people, a baker and a butler. One of them is not um, put into his position again. The baker is not, but the butler or the wine taster, this person that's close to the to Pharaoh, he gets put back in. And both had dreams interpreted by Joseph. That was the interpretation of the dreams. One is going to get restored, the other one's not. And so then again, dreams we see happening a lot. You see it happening in the life of Pharaoh here. Pharaoh has a dream, and it's kind of a freaky dream. Uh, certain cows eating other cows, skinny cows eating fat cows. The whole thing is just kind of weird. Anyway, you read about that in Genesis 41, um, 17. As we're going to see in the thing, we're going to see what the dream says. But anyway, the whole idea here, I think, about this lesson is pivotal moments. And when it's time to respond in pivotal moments, we should exhibit three traits that we see here exhibited by Joseph. The first one is this. The first trait is humility. We should point to God with humility. Look at verse 14. Here's what it says. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Joseph. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. Okay, so you're standing in front of the most powerful person in the world at the time. You're standing in front of, think about Joseph, standing in front of this really powerful person. He's has to live up to what is the expectation of him. This guy is a guy who thinks he's a god. He purports himself to be a god. And so here's what is said to him. Hey, I heard you can interpret dreams. That's what I'm told. So tell me what my dream means. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. Here's this humility. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. So this is uh, a, a humbling thing. This is a sign of humility in Joseph's life. He says, I'm not the one that can do it. God's the one that can do it. And I believe God's going to answer um, and give me an interpretation of your dream. And so that leads us to trait number two. And by the way, in pivotal moments, it's best for us to trust the Lord and to do that we only trust the Lord when we have a humble spirit. Um, when we recognize that it's not in us to be what we ought to be, it's in God to do that, and God can do what He can do, and we can do what we can do. That's that's the trait that we see here with Joseph. Here's the second trait: discernment. We should look for God for discernment. Verse 17. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river seven kine, flat-fleshed and well-flavored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, seven other kine came after them, poor and very ill-favored, lean-fleshed. Such I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. These are the worst cows. I've never seen cows this bad, is what he's saying. And the lean and the ill-favored kind did eat up the seven fat kind. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them up, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke. So these poor-looking cows ate the fat cows, but they didn't really change them that much. um, that's what you see happen here, and so you see Joseph um, hearing this dream and then looking to God for discernment. That continues as you read down through verse uh, 21. It's the same thing happens. And see, and Joseph saith unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is to do. The seven good kind are 7 years, and the seven good years are 7 years. The dream is one. What God is about to do, verse 28, he showeth to Pharaoh. So this is Joseph leaning into what God has done, and God is giving him discernment. We see that he interprets the dream, and then so you have this trait of discernment. Then trait number 3, the trait of wisdom. We should trust in God for wisdom. If you look down to verse 33, he says, now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of the good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants. Um, Interesting here, Joseph trusting in the Lord and believing God had given him discernment moves forward and going from what Pharaoh did ask, that is, tell me what the meaning of my dream is, to giving him advice based on that dream. And the advice, by the way, is pretty good. When things are good, don't spend everything you have. Save some of what you have so that when things are bad, you are going to do okay. Um, Here, he knew things were going to go bad because God told him that was what was going to happen. And so, but we don't always know that when things are going to go bad, but we can predict that things aren't always going to be as good as they are at other times. And so it's good. There is ebbs and flows to your income. There's ebbs and flows to the resources, to the land. And that's what we see Joseph recommending that they do. And Pharaoh gets pretty excited. He actually makes Joseph the ruler. That person that Joseph recommended to oversee what it takes to uh, execute this plan. Basically, Pharaoh says, "I like the plan, and I think you're the guy." And so God God ordained that this would happen, and God's sovereignty made this possible. Pretty pivotal moment. Standing in front of the most powerful person in the world, giving this person really bad news, but then giving this person, as you trust in the Lord, acknowledging God for that God's the source of this information, that God's the source of wisdom, and then having confidence in God to step forward and to be bold and to say, "Hey, this is what should happen." Pretty pivotal moment, and it was used by God. God brought him to that moment uh, to uh, to do what God wanted to have happen um, in this particular story. And so um, God had orchestrated these events from the pit to the Potiphar's house to um, the prison, and then now to the palace. And then it's in this palace in front of Pharaoh, a lot of P's there, that he, Joseph, because he believed God's with him, was humble. He had discernment, and God gave him the wisdom to essentially hit it out of the park in this pivotal moment. We ought to be humble. We need to look to God for discernment and for wisdom. Hope this helped, and that you communicate well to your class on Sunday. Have a good day.